if he does a technical mistake, he should be protected. A doctor who his patient dies because 0.01% of this type of operation could result in death, and he did the procedures professionally, but a mistake happened, does not go to jail.
Right.
The same should be applied to civil servants responsible for dealing with investors,
Right.
especially when it comes to allocation of land.
Dr. Ahmed, do you agree? Do you agree that it's...
I agree definitely with Dr. Ali. It's just one thing I think I might be able to summarize, being part of the reform groups going into the government. I think all the obstacles when it comes to offering land or even giving the clearance goes back to the actual administrative system. What Dr. Ara is referring to, I think, is being a proactive from the government side if there's a zone. And on the probably the new investment law will basically explain that each governorate will have an investment portfolio for that government with the amount of land and all the clearances with it, and it will be given to the investment promotion authority that's supposed to be created recently, and it will, all these parts of lands or pieces of land will be marketed in that particular approach with a semi-finished or semi-finalized basically clearance. I still have a problem with the administrative system. I think that's where all it stands. Either when it comes to the person with good intention, as Dr. Allah is referring to, probably if he has a proper committees, qualified committees that can check the feasibility and study all the elements of the project, I think there shouldn't be a problem, and clearance should be given. But I can't protect him on his own. If it's something, an individual signature, but every signature will have basically to be backed up by a qualified committee to address all the issues and deal with it and grant the land. But if it comes to bribery, and here in the new reform, and working with that, and that particular plan is on the President Sisi's desk, we're talking about two branches coming out from the administrative monitoring agencies that will be specifically for monitoring any financial or administrative irregularities from the minister's office before they go out. So if I have a major project like in Marsa Matruh, and the committees have studied it, signed it off, then it goes to the minister for implementation. Then before it goes out to the actual announcement, it will go to the administrative, basically, reporting. And if they give the go-ahead, then we catch it before any corruption can take place. But as Dr. Allah said, I think legislation is a major issue here for us, and that's what scares the civil servant or the officials, because the laws are not really clear. And we've got that ambiguous rules and regulations, and a lot of them actually contradict. And if you look at the investment law, it talks in general about investment in Egypt, but it doesn't say anything about Sinai. And surprisingly, you find that Sinai has its own law. So why don't you say that in investment law so people know? So they come. One last thing when it comes to the administrative system is the people without qualifications. Corruption and nepotism, I think, has put a lot of people that reach into officials, and you find that. Look at Alexandria, Cairo, the highway. In a couple of months, made by the army as a great first standard, world class.
Yes.
But why is being damaged all the past 34 years? Is it corruption or unqualified engineers or people that are basically building without a proper criteria?
But doesn't that mean that the administrative structure needs to be restructured?
And I always say that this is the next national plan or next national project on President Sisi's hands. Before we go any further, because I'm saying this on live TV, that if we don't do that, we're going to have Suez Canal projects sold under the table. In Marsa Matruh, all the projects will be sold on the table. What's been sold during Mubarak era in the 90s, that's 1,200 factories that were built during President Nasser. That, evaluated by the International Bank and the World Bank, $1.4 trillion. That's worth of the Egyptian economy. I need a qualification, number one. I need a proper rules and regulations that gives guarantees to investors and at the same time protects the national security, because I think one of the areas that also people are worried about the land, give it to foreigners. And as Dr. Allah said, I'm not going to take it away with me. But the fact here is, again, it has to be granted. Yet, we have all these rules and regulations and complex legislation, and we only won one case in an international commercial arbitration.
I'm wondering because I understand that in Gulf states you have to have a local
Fine, do
businessman
that.
as a partner in order to acquire
Fine.
land.
It's being cancelled in most countries now. In most GCC countries, it's now being cancelled.
Has it? Because it was always a thing that you had
was
to
a
have
debate.
They have a custodian, as they used to call
a
it.
partner, or you should at least have. I mean, there are certain countries certainly where foreigners
but
cannot
Mr.
acquire
Burkett,
land
investors-
or can't acquire homes, for
Yeah,
example.
but investors, I don't think they even have a problem with that.
Right.
They, when it comes to Sinai, they all understand.
Right.
And believe me, they all understand when it comes to Sinai. Fine, give it to me 40 years or 50 years, fine. But
Right,
just
so
do
it's a
something.
long-term lease,
Do
basically.
something.
Right.
Yet you find there's a lot of restrictions on owning the land, and you find a huge, big case like Siraj that was for dance that cost the country $1 billion.
Right. You mentioned obviously this, and I want to just sort of tap into that because we mentioned restructuring, but there's always this fear of the backlash.
Yes.
Of that. Is there a way that you think that it can be done where backlash is avoidable?
When it comes to new laws?
Restructuring
Civil,
administration.
Oh, destruction administration. Let me explain to you how it's been running at this moment. And the first one that was done is the presidential palace. Number one is we look at the three areas. Number one is the actual institution, joint or separate departments as we need. Number two, look at the legislation correction. So redo all the rules and regulations and how people work and what time they sign, what time they go home, job description, everything. And then go into people, train them for a year, and then start evaluating them first and second. And then from the third year, you start to either work properly or you go home.
All right.
That's it. So in brief, three areas, institutions, legislation, and people.
Right.
So there's no backlash. Normally, when it comes to the reform of the administrative system, in Europe and United States, they just tell people, go home, we don't need you. But in Egypt, we've got a social element that President Sisi and the entire government account, nobody will be retrenched. But the fact here, we have to work.
Right.
Because at the moment we've got a hope for a lot of things, but not actually introducing anything to get that.
Right, Dr. Ayat, do you want to comment on that, or should I ask
you
you
have,
about?
let me just wrap this up in a simple way. You have 6 million civil servants,
Right.
plus or minus, which means for every 13 citizens, you have one civil servant. That's 10 times what is available as an average global. And it's even more than China, more than any country in the world.
That's right.
So, and let's be realistic. You pay peanuts, you get monkeys. Fact of life. You are not paying them, and they're not working. It's the system, it's an understanding that has been going on for years. What I propose is what has been used as a solution for the rent in Egypt. You had a housing problem, so what you did is you have a new law for the new rents, and who has been existing on the old law will carry on.
Right.
What we would propose is that you establish and act a new law where you get qualified civil servants, pay them real market prices, and the old economy that has been there for the social reasons, for the social dimension that has been said, carry on until they go on pension.
Right.
Life is very simple. And who wants to jump from this to that has the right to do that, subject that he goes through training, examinations, and then he joins the new parallel institution that you're creating.
Right.
I think this is the only solution to prevent the backlash that you have mentioned,
Right.
any civil unrest, and who wants to carry on as a civil servant who does not work and is paid peanuts, more than welcome. The offer is still on the table.
Right. Well, I've got two experts with me, and I guess I wanted to sort of expand and talk about your thoughts on the status of the Egyptian economy at present. We're seeing a lot of changes. We're seeing a change to the head of the Egyptian central bank, and I just wanted your thoughts on that.
First, since you mentioned the central bank first, I have to present all the thanks for governor, actually still the present governor of the central bank, Hisham Ramiz, for all what he has provided as support and for accepting the position at such a critical time, and welcome the new governor of the central bank. The problem is being governor of central bank in Egypt at this present time is not the most appealing task to do. We had lots of backlashes, I'll use your terminology, that the economy has suffered in the past few months. One of them was the downtrend of lots of international prices of lots of commodities, most of which are my export baskets. Right. So whether we're talking about oil and gas, whether we're talking about agro-foods, unfortunately, the trend has been going down as international prices. And this created a reduction in the revenue of exports. My exports did not go down volume-wise, but my exports went down drastically wise. In the same time, tourism that we were expecting that will start recapping did not. In parallel, our banking system was not that efficient in bringing back the repatriations of Egyptian expats, where according to IMF, the cost is about 22% from wherever they're working to the village back home, where collateral methodologies managed to be more efficient, providing less cost.
Right.
So all this reduced the incoming inflow of foreign currency. In the same time, our imports, whether we're talking about industrial inputs, which is 79% of my total imports, including their oil and gas requirements, and the food subsidized items and other staple items that we're importing has been going up. So it was not the rosy situation to balance, especially at a time where we were all supporting the central bank, trying to bring back with administrative procedures, bring back everything to the pre-2011 situation where we had a very free market regarding foreign currency. Unfortunately, the whole package did not succeed after several months of implementation, and we from our side as representatives of the business community, we are asking the central bank to revisit the February regulations, because the situation could not continue as it is. We have to find ways out.
Right. So what do you think, Dr. Ahmed? What do you think are some of the ways
I'll go
out?
the socialist way, because I've seen that working in a number of countries that coming out of similar situations, like in South Africa and Brazil. You have to implement two areas. Probably Dr. Alai can comment on that if they probably had looked at it. Number one is looking at having a fixed amount for every citizen cannot be exceeded to go out of the country. At this point, there is no limit on what the local citizen can take out of Egypt. You might say, $10,000 or 10,000 Egyptian pounds, but it's actually not implemented. Let's clear on that. There's a lot of money smuggling that's taken place, and we know. That taken that quite clearly. Number one. Number two, at this moment, you cannot have dollars or sell dollars for Egyptian pounds from the banks only. There's a lot of areas, and there's a lot of informal market. So what guarantees do we have as a government or as a nation that this exchange is taking place in the informal sector is not being smuggled? And here it confirms my first point. So what I'm proposing is the actual socialist way, looking at putting restrictions again on the currency fluctuation that's taken place as we had it in the beginning of the 80s. We need to relook at that. Number two is putting a limit on what goes out of the country, that they should stop the foreign exchange offices or companies that exist in Egypt. And that decision might not really be appealing to a lot of people, but I still see that the banking system, absolutely, but the problem is the banking system has no control over the exchange rate, because at the moment you change it from the bank, how much is it today? 790. Outside you find it 9.5. So how do I actually control that? And I've seen that, and it's not just an idea that I'm giving. I've seen that implemented, these two areas, having a maximum limit for every citizen, and the second one is to actually close all the foreign exchange companies that operate in that.
It's indeed very socialist.
Absolutely.
Dr.
Well, we've tried the free market approach, it didn't work. So let's hope that might be.
We've been friends until now.
Yes,
now we've lost the friendship.
There's always the idea that there was this idea, I don't know whether the pros and cons of it, but devaluing the Egyptian pound has been something that a lot of people have how a lot of business people have mentioned, but the average Egyptian isn't going to be happy about it at all.
Let's be realistic, okay? There is no magic wand that can just prescribe. I wish.
Right.
I wish that any of us can just prescribe and you go and have it done. But let's take things in perspective. First, regarding the ceiling, the cap for taking money out of the country, according to Basel regulations that we are part of, it's $10,000 that anybody can go. But probably what you meant was that you can use your credit card to spend 2 million. As long as you're paying in Egyptian pounds, it can work. So maybe is the thing. But this brings me to something more important. If you want that people who have dollars with them start switching them back into Egyptian pounds, like it happened back in 2002, and if you want FDI to come to the country, you need to create confidence. And confidence cannot be achieved with grass-hopping regulations that keep changing every 2 minutes. So this is one side of the story. My priority today is creating the confidence in the Egyptian economy.
Right.
The second thing, which is more important, Egyptians have agreed on something called constitution. And Article 27 of the constitution says, for the first time, says that Egypt follows free market economy.
Right.
The regulated free market economy, which means that you have consumer protection and at the same time you have competition. So whether we like it or not, this is what Egyptians have agreed upon. This is what our legislations have to be amended to comply with.
Right.
And this is what no regulation can be taken that can be against the Egyptian constitution. So it's a free market economy, fact of life, finished until the constitution is changed.
Right.
Until then, this is the only way forward. So what needs to be done? Devaluation alone or valuation, actually what we're saying is floating the Egyptian pound, which means its real value is, according to most economic assessments of Egypt, that the Egyptian pound is overvaluated. And this will solve two problems. Number one, it will render imports non-economic, because if I can buy this today based on the exchange rate of today, if the Egyptian pound moves a bit lower to reach its real value, this will go out of my purchasing power.
Right.
So this is the fastest track of reducing imports. In the same time, it will render my exports more economic, so I'll be more competitive. So, and then you'll have the economy improving, so the Egyptian pound will become stronger again, then it will start balancing. And it's a sine wave that all economies live in.
Right.
In Egypt, this sine wave is very frequent. The frequency is very high, so it goes up and down very fast. But it will stabilize. This is one element, which is what you mentioned, floating the Egyptian pound. But this alone will not work. The second thing is completely liberalizing the free market, the exchange market completely. So against what you've been proposing, because either you go this way or that way, by the way. There is no straightforward. It's either left or right. You have no other option. Both elements, this package of incentives, plus a number of actions that have to be taken simultaneously. One of them is very quickly launching the master plan of the Suez Canal corridor. Because these are projects that will be with 30 to 50 years concession, which means that the big foreign investor, the big line, the big port on global basis who's dying to be part of this, if they don't come today, it's their grandchildren afterwards.
Right.
So whether we're talking about security, we're talking about the economy, the exchange rate, red tape, all this is nonsense when it comes to major projects like that. Another project, which, stealing from one of my colleagues his description because I found it's really cute, where you went into the middle of nowhere in the desert and you said the new capital, which means that this land in the middle of nowhere became Tahrir, became downtown. It appreciated price-wise drastically. So what you need to do is quickly start launching a number of these projects, open up investments in them very fast, and accordingly you'll be having an avalanche of inflow of foreign currency.
Right. Would you say that what is the major hindrance right now to the economy, to investor inflows and etc., is the slow pace of decision making?
That's right.
Especially when it comes to allocation of the land required. Suez Canal Corridor. I can't go to Marsa Matruh and do a Suez Canal Corridor project.
No.
It does not work.
Right.
I have to be there. So the master plan has to be there, and Egypt has to announce, is this open for foreign direct investment? Is this to Egyptians only? Is this a 51% partnership? This has to be announced, and we cannot utilize neither the new investment law nor the special economic zones law for something like the Suez Canal Corridor.
Right.
I'd be joking if I use either.
Let me just take one sentence from Dr. Ahmed. How important is it that we move quickly, that the government now moves quickly to implement, to increase investments, to open up?
I'll summarize it in a very short sentence. Civilization is management.
Right.
Have the right people on the right positions,
Right.
you'll fly.
All right.
China, Japan, Brazil proves the theory.
Okay, Dr. Ahmed Mehenna, Professor of Political Economy, thank you very much for coming in tonight. And Dr. Ala Aez, the Secretary General of the Federation of Egyptian Chambers of Commerce, thank you very much for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. We'll be coming your way again tomorrow, same time, same place, here on Nile TV International. Thanks very much for watching, and bye-bye.